Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Judy Blake, and I'm with Family to Family Network. Leslie Lawson, Leslie's going to wave for a quick second, and I are very glad to have you back joining us again today. We received quite a few surveys, which was great. Please, please, please complete the survey link from Monday. I emailed it to everybody. It's really important that you submit those because when we want to get grant funding again, our grant funders want to know how everything was and how everybody liked everything, or if we need to make changes. So if you don't send in your grants, if you don't send in your surveys, it's really hard for us to get funding again. So welcome back. This is session 2, top 10 tips for successful ARDs. Just know that we want this to be a really safe space. We know there's a lot of information. Please don't think you have to remember everything. Feel uncomfortable, need to remain private. We understand. Just private message Leslie or Judy Blake, myself, and we can go ahead and read your question privately and get it answered publicly. For Spanish speakers, my Spanish is not great. You can either write it in the chat box and I can read it out loud. And if you do not feel uncomfortable asking your question publicly, then please private message either Catherine Torres or Myrna Wallace. Sorry, Myrna Wallace or Catherine Torres. They are our translators for today. So let's make sure everyone's muted. Our goal is to finish in about an hour because we know your time is very valuable. We apologize that we went so far over on Monday, but that always happens, the first class for everyone. So next slide, Leslie, we're going to go ahead and get right in on those top 10 tips. So some of this you may have heard on Monday. If you're new to the group and didn't, this will be new for you. Keep in mind that you know your child better than anyone else. You have many rights as a parent in the special education process. You need to learn those rights. Leslie and I can talk all day long and we can tell people, but you really do need to understand it because your child by law is entitled to a free and appropriate education. And that is called FAPE, F-A-P-E for short. Whoa, hold on, Leslie. I think there was something there that you went too quickly.
Okay.
I saw something at the bottom real quick. Okay, yeah. FAPE requires schools to provide special education to meet the unique needs of your child. So it's really, really important. And some of you have asked about, what we do as far as advocacy goes. So what we do is we teach advocacy. We want to empower parents. We want to educate parents. We want to educate. We don't attend ARD meetings. We are such a small staff. We can always give you suggestions if you need advocates. It's not as though we can recommend one over the other, but we teach advocacy. We do not attend ARD meetings. It's just not possible at this point. So keep in mind that everything that we talk about is based on the IDEA manual, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. That is the law. It's federal law, and it makes sure that public schools are serving the educational needs of students with disabilities. Leslie and I don't make these things up. Leslie and I are not the law. We are explaining to you what federal law is according to IDEA. So the IDEA manual, and many thanks to Leslie, she found that the Spanish version of the IDEA manual has been updated, and there is the link. We also have the link for the English version of the IDEA manual. And the organization, Disability Rights Texas, is really an amazing organization that we collaborate with on different projects. And you can find the manual located on these links, English and Spanish. Next slide, please.
I was just going to say something about the
Sure.
IDEA parent manual. It is very parent friendly and easy to understand. It has sample letters in there. And I would pretty much say that if you're not willing to read this manual to learn, you're going to need an advocate, because if you don't know your rights, you're only going to get a fraction of what your child should get.
And we want your child to get everything they possibly can. Tip number 3, the IEP, and again, we know we use a lot of acronyms, so just to review, the IEP abbreviation stands for Individualized Education Plan. So my son is now 27, Leslie's son is an adult. Her son's IEP was very different from my son's IEP. There may have been some similarities, but generally it was very, very different. Does this manual cover charter schools and private schools? Great question. So this manual is for all public and charter schools. Yes, go ahead and leave and join on your iPad. So this IDE manual is federal law, and any public school or charter school, so KIP, Harmony, I think there's one called Accelerated, any charter school must follow IDEA. If they tell you they don't, somebody made a mistake and they were incorrect. As far as private schools go, no, they do not have to follow IDEA. Parents are choosing to pay the school to provide services. And, regardless of whether your child is going to be public or private or charter school, we encourage parents to work collaboratively with schools. But public and charter schools must follow IDEA. So the IEP, that's what you're working on for your child. It's the centerpiece of that federal legislation from IDEA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And it is to make sure that your child is receiving that free and appropriate education. You really have to think of the IEP as a contract between you, the parent or caregiver, maybe you're a grandparent or whatever, but that is a contract between you and the school. It's your role as a parent participant to participate in the development of your child's IEP. So you really need to know what you're agreeing to and what's involved. If you don't understand something, how can you possibly agree to it? So just keep in mind that, and Leslie mentioned this the other day, and I think it was really important on Monday when she said that you're really the most important person at that table when it comes to IEP development. And in those ARD meetings, parents are the most important, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your child. And the school is as well during school hours. But as a parent, you must become involved. We encourage parents to be active participants. Next slide, unless you want to add something, Leslie.
Well, I was going to say, one thing that I didn't realize for a long time is that the school is supposed to prepare your child academically, but also for higher education, employment, and independent living. And independent living part is where the functional goals come in. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, great point. And we discussed that a little bit on Monday, but yeah, keep in mind that these IEPs, these ARD meetings that you're having with the school every year, when your child leaves school and graduates, and that could be at 18, 19, 20, 21, or 22, but the school should have prepared them for higher education, post-secondary education, employment, and independent living. And that can mean different things to different people. Or maybe like my son, they didn't pursue post-secondary education. And that's okay. It's different for each person who graduates. But just know that this process is to ensure those three things. So tip number 4, what should you do before your ARD IEP meeting? Gather information. You want to make sure that you have draft copies of evaluations. What are your child's present levels of academic achievement and functional performance? We touched on that earlier. It's an awful acronym abbreviation, but PLAF. What are the proposed IEP goals and objectives? Are there any supplemental materials? Is there a behavior plan in place for your child? Maybe there isn't, and that's okay. But if there is, you want to have that information prior to that meeting. You know, any test scores. Is there a subject that your child is not doing well in? And if they're not doing well in something, then absolutely. So as far as requesting ARDs, we're going to take questions at the end so we can get through these tips, but we'll answer that at the end. So you want to make sure that you're prepared. Tip number 5. Evaluation. It's important to realize that all services that your child needs, they're based on that initial evaluation. And then after that evaluation, the school should be collecting data to see if further assessments need to be made, do changes need to be made. So there's a timeline. Again, Leslie and I don't make this up. The school doesn't make up their own timeline. There's a timeline for that initial evaluation. Unfortunately, there are no required timelines for any other requests for evaluations or re-evaluations. So if your child needs further evaluation, find out when it's going to be completed and get it documented in that IEP, that individualized education plan. Make sure it's in those ARD minutes. The meeting
Judy,
minutes.
also yesterday we kind of misspoke about one of the timelines.
Oh my.
The written request, it triggers the timelines that the school has to follow, and that's 15 school days.
Right.
Once you provide your written request, then they have 45 school days to conduct the evaluation after receiving your signed consent. And then they have the school has 30 calendar days after completing the evaluation to hold the IEP meeting to review the results and determine eligibility and develop an IEP. And there are some days that aren't going to be included. So school days that do not include any day that the student is not in school, such as weekends or holidays, breaks. If the student is absent more than 3 days after the consent for evaluation is signed, the school may extend the 45-day timeline by the number of absences. So I just wanted to clarify because we were a little partly wrong yesterday.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought we had stated that, but okay.
Well, somebody asked about when do they have to hold the IEP meeting, and we thought it was 30 school days like the other, but it's 30 calendar days for the evaluation.
Oh, okay. My apologies to everyone. Okay.
Well, that was me too.
Okay. And whatever you just read, maybe we will send that in an email if you can copy and paste.
It's right there in that handy IDEA parent manual.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Yep, you're right. Okay. I practice what I preach, right? Tip number 6, is this where you're going to take over, or would you like me to do this slide?
Go ahead, Judy.
Okay. It's meeting time. I know these meetings can be so stressful. They can be overwhelming, lots of information. You've got 8 people sitting across from you. They all know each other, and maybe you've just met them for the first time. If possible, try to take somebody with you. You don't necessarily have to bring an advocate, but maybe bring a friend, a relative, just someone who can be a second set of ears and a second set of eyes. I think that's really, really important to have someone else with you. Meet with them ahead of time so that they know your concerns and can assure that your questions are addressed. Maybe the person that is with you, maybe they're in charge of taking notes. Maybe they're looking at the art agenda on your behalf to make sure that everything is followed. And they just are supporting you during the meeting. Keep in mind, you can take your child to the meeting. It doesn't have to stay there for the whole time. Doesn't have to do that. My son could have cared less about coming, but I made sure he came for at least a little bit. But they can at least introduce themselves to everyone at the meeting. You know, sometimes we're so focused on the, and the procedures are important. Believe me, the IEP is important. But there's a person attached to that paper. There's a person attached to that IEP. And I think it's really important that the committee see who that is. So when your child is in high school, automatically they should be attending the meetings. If you want to start in middle school, sure, go for it. Whatever works for you and your child. But this can help prepare your child for the day when they are required to attend the meetings, which again begins in high school. I started with my son just for maybe 10 minutes in middle school, and that helped. It really, really made a difference. And I know that somebody had written that they were so surprised. They never knew they could bring anybody. Sure, bring who you want. It's open. You are the one that is advocating for your child. So tip number 7.
Judy, I wasn't able to let that last one person in. I don't know, it flashed away.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought they were already in. Maybe they got knocked off.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully they'll come back. And sounds great. I'm seeing the private messages. We will also, here they come. And we will also get to the questions when Leslie is done with the remaining tips.
Okay, tip number 7, during the meeting, ask a lot of questions. If you don't understand an acronym or what something means or how they're going to do something, if it doesn't make sense, be sure and ask, because of course you're the most important person in there and you need to know what you're agreeing to. Also, it's always good to ask for data to support any decisions that they're going to make or how the data was collected. You know, ask for support if you need help understanding something. I think it's really important to ask the other people, like the teachers, the paras, or the speech person or whoever, if they need any type of support. Sometimes they're afraid to ask, but if you ask that direct question in the meeting, you know, maybe you can get an answer. Remember that if you ask a yes or no question, you're probably going to get a yes or no answer. And again, data is really important, like moving forward. One time I asked for data that was collected on the reading program that they were supposed to be using with my son, and they couldn't provide that data. So they were making decisions without the data. And then a week later, they came up with a data collection sheet that I knew was fabricated because data was collected on days that my son wasn't there. So data is really important. Otherwise, you're just guessing. It's good to ask open-ended questions like what will it take or how does that work? So it's not just a yes, no answer. And it helps you guys, all of the ARD committee, come up with solutions. Tip number 8, during the school year, meet and communicate with the staff and professionals that work for your kid, with your kid during the year. Don't wait till the ARD meeting is the only time that you talk to one another. Not that you're going to take up a lot of their time or anything, but you don't want to be blindsided at your annual ARD about something that nobody's ever communicated to you. And of course, we do encourage you to work together with the school before. I used to have planning meetings with the case manager or the teacher to discuss concerns and to kind of brainstorm ideas about goals for the annual IEP meeting. Set up a communication system that works for both you and the teacher. You know, they have a lot of other students besides yours, so make it something that's easy and works for both of you guys. That was really important for me because my son could not communicate to me what was going on. So we had like a daily notebook that would go back and forth. Whatever works for you, though. That way I could tell him, oh, he didn't sleep last night. So they would know if he was, why he was cranky that day and wouldn't think he was sick, or just they could let me know different things that happened that were important at the school that day that I could reinforce at home. So communication is really important.
And Leslie, I just want to add too that I agree with you. I can't stress it enough how important that communication is. You know, you shouldn't just be communicating with the teachers or anyone working with your child once a year or when you receive documents for the ARD meeting. There should be that communication. I've been a single parent for over 20 years. So if I knew that my kids were going to be at their dad's the weekend before, I would just shoot them a quick email and say, hey, listen, just so you know, my kids were with their dad this weekend, so they may be a little bit more tired. They may be a little out of sorts because I'm a little more structured and their dad is not. Doesn't make it good or bad. It's just differences in styles. So it's really important to communicate those things with the teacher.
Yes, thanks, Judy.
You're welcome. And yes, I see the notes in the chat and we will get to those.
Document. If it's not in writing, it was never said, never happened, never said. So put any request in writing and try to get responses in writing. And email is fine. You know, if most of the people at your child's school have email addresses on the website, or if not, you can get them. If it's not written down somewhere, it may not happen. So if you email and then they pick up the phone and call you back, that's fine too. Listen to them, but as soon as you hang up, send them an email. As per our conversation today, I understood that you were going to do X, Y, and Z and make sure this and that happened. So, and please reply so I know we're both on the same page. I think the more you document, the less likely you are to end up in a disagreement about something in your ARD meeting. So we talked about the procedural safeguards yesterday. Make sure you look at them, read and highlight.
Hold on, let me mute somebody. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, okay, you're okay.
Okay. Take a look at them before the meeting so you know your rights on page 2. You don't have to sit down and read the whole thing every time or anything, but just make sure you know the basic rights and what to do when the school proposes or refuses to provide a certain service or do something. The more information you know about your rights and prior written notice, the better outcome you will have. So we have a great page on Texas Project First, our website. That's another great site to go to. It's very parent friendly. You can search by topic, and it was written by parents for parents. And you can read more about your rights and prior written notice. So I would encourage you to do that. And Texas Project First is in English and Spanish. You can click on a little button.
Great website. Really, really great. Written by parents for parents, provides accurate and consistent information on the special education process.
Tip 10, get educated, learn about your child's disability and the special education process, attend trainings like this and by other parent organizations. A lot of the school districts have training throughout the year. Region 4 Education Service Center is our local education service center, and they have a lot of trainings. You can go and check that out on their website. It's Region 4 Education Service Center. I like to use an ARD agenda to keep yourself organized, because that helps you to know what comes first in the IEP ARD meeting. So you're not jumping all over. Some school districts have it out on the table during the ARD meeting. You can look at a sample one on Texas Project First. That web link is not correct, though. It's going to be texasprojectfirst.org, and you're going to have to search ARD agenda. We have changed some of the pages, so that one, we didn't catch that one.
We will get that changed. And something else I want to mention real quick, the first line where Leslie mentioned about, understand your child's disability. If I could tell you the number of parents that I talk to, they really don't understand the disability or how it displays with their child. No two kids are alike. It has to do with autism, developmental disabilities, learning disabilities, dyslexia, dyscalculia, epilepsy, Down syndrome. No two kids are alike. It's really important as parents that you understand what your child's disability is, and if there's co-disabilities, other co-occurring disabilities, and how it works with your child.
Good point, Judy. So there are a lot of tools to help you understand the process, and I've already mentioned your procedural safeguards, Texas Project First, the IDEA manual. I prefer to use the IDEA parent manual the most, but different people like different tools. There's also the guide to the ARD process. There's a great dispute resolution handbook. There's the parent companion. It's great for people who have young kids. So you can Google those and see which one you like to use. I definitely use more than one, because sometimes you have to read it in a different way before you actually understand it. Organization, tip 11, organize your materials. I try to keep a binder. You don't have to do, some people use an accordion file, but keep your all your paperwork and everything organized. So when you go into the meeting, you can find things really fast. You might want to use a binder with tabs, have the initial evaluation, work samples, report cards, progress reports, any notes, and things like that. So we're not going to discuss that in our last session because we had a different last session last year. So anyway, it's good to be organized and have everything with you. Tip 12, and we're going to talk a whole lot about this tomorrow, but it's really important to know what to do if you disagree with the ARD committee. A lot of people don't like to disagree. They feel very intimidated. You feel like they're not going to like you or whatever, but I'm not telling you to disagree about every little thing, but if it's something really important, it is okay to disagree. And but if you do disagree, you have to take the next step. Just because, like, I have a lot of parents call and say, well, I disagreed, but they didn't do anything about it. Well, that's probably because you didn't take the next step, because disagreeing and doing nothing is the same thing as agreeing. So just remember that. If you disagree and do nothing, you're basically agreeing with them, because nothing's going to happen. Because if you disagree and do nothing, they get to do what they feel is best. If you don't agree with your evaluation, you can request an independent evaluation. That's something that can be very helpful. A lot of people, if they do, for instance, these are just examples. It could be about any part of the evaluation. It doesn't have to be about the whole evaluation. So for instance, if you request, if part of the evaluation was a speech and language evaluation, and they tell you that your child doesn't need that, or maybe they're not offering enough services in that area, you have a right to ask for an independent evaluation at their expense. And they pretty much always do that because it's cheaper to go ahead and pay for the independent evaluation. And they have to consider it. They don't have to do exactly, but it can be helpful. Yeah, that it's generally cheaper for the school district to go ahead and pay for that than to take you to due process. So they almost always do allow independent evaluations. If you don't agree with the program or services, you can write down why you don't agree. You can express that and make sure it's captured in the meeting minutes. But it's important to do that. If you don't understand what's happening in the ARD meeting, it might be good to disagree, because anytime you disagree, there's a 10-day or more recess, and you come back together and try to come to some kind of, gather more information and try to come to some type of agreement. So that every page of that IEP document is very important. And there are a lot of acronyms and codes that you may not understand. Be sure and ask what that means. What does this code mean? What does it mean? What does in-class support look like? Is that a special education teacher providing that, or a para? Are they in there only for my child, or are they in there for 6 kids? It's just really important to understand every page of that document. So you don't want to agree to a document and everything that's in it. It's like a contract if you don't understand everything. If you disagree, it's important to make sure that you provide written statement, or it's reflected in the IEP minutes. Always read the minutes of the meeting before you sign and make sure they are correct, because somebody's typing those in and they may hear something different than what you said. So be sure and check that out too. If there's no statement of disagreement, the committee might think you're agreeing with them. Go ahead, Judy.
Yeah, sorry about that. And something else too is, they should be reading the ARD minutes to everyone at the end of the meeting before you sign it. And just a reminder that we talked about the other day, if English is not your native language and you want it in Spanish or Farsi or Mandarin, you need to let them know prior to the meeting that you need a translator. I mean, don't just show up and say, oh, I need a translator. You want to make sure that you let them know ahead of time so that one can be arranged. But just know that those minutes should be read back before you sign anything. And if you have questions, ask, but make sure it's in a language that you understand.
Yeah. And this is just very brief on disagreement because we're going to cover it in detail tomorrow. So there's a lot more to know about what you can do if you disagree and different options, but we will cover that tomorrow. Create a vision for your child. So I think this is really important and it will help to guide you in the ARD committee where you want to see your child going. So, the whole purpose of IDEA is to prepare your child for higher education, training, employment, and independent living. So it's like a map to get your child to the right destination. We all have hopes and dreams for our children, even if they have a disability. So you want to share that. It doesn't have to be a lot, just maybe a half page or 1-page vision to let them know. I used to always start the meeting with the vision for my child. My vision was for Cameron to grow up, live in the home with us, grow up in the community, be an active member of the community when he got out of high school, to live with people that he loved and be as productive as possible, but most of all, to be happy and safe. And my vision was never for him to grow up and go live in an institution like the State Supported Living Center. So that made a difference in all of our decisions of where he was going to be placed, how we were going to do things. So the vision really helps guide you. And your vision can change over the years. You may have a vision for your child to go to a 4-year university, and that's fine because that at least starts you on that path. And you can change that as your child gets older. You may need to make some adjustments, but you can always have a vision with setting the bar high for your child. It's really important to think about what your child's going to do when the school bus stops coming, because you get all of these services and have all of this for your child while they're in public education. And then when the bus stops coming, you don't want your child to graduate to the couch.
And that happens so quickly. You think it's, oh, I've got time. And it comes up really quickly, because once that bus stops coming at age 18 to 22, what we are concerned for is when parents call us and they've been out of high school for 3 or 4 years and they've just been on the computer all day or playing video games.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, what do I do now? Mm-hmm. Those habits are really hard to break.
Yeah, and I really think it helps if you don't have to do anything elaborate, but if you'll just sit down and think about your hopes and dreams for your child and what are their hopes and dreams, if they can vocalize those. What are they going to do after school when it's over? And of course, just like with our typical children, that changes from year to year, and that's okay. But what steps is it going to take to get your child where they want to be and where you want them to be? And it really helps to write some of that down. I kind of resisted that for a long time, but it really does make sense, just because I felt, oh, another homework. I go to different trainings, that's another homework assignment for me, but it really did help us focus. And then you can share that at the beginning of every ARD meeting. Okay, tip number 13 is I just want to stress the importance, if you don't know about Medicaid waiver programs. Now, this is different than Medicaid insurance. In Texas, we have Medicaid waiver programs, which are for children and adults, and it's long-term services. It can include things like respite care, attendant care, adaptive aids, employment assistance, employment help, day hab, residential living in some cases. So it's really important that if your child is not on these waiting lists, you get them on the waiting list. They don't look at the parent's income and resources. Instead, they're based on financial eligibility of the individual. So like, for instance, most children don't have an income or resources. So when your child's name comes to the top of the wait lists are very long in Texas right now. So they're 15 to 20 years long. Get them on the waiting list as soon as possible. And if you move, you have to let them know. And they should contact you at least every 2 years. But if they don't, call them up. Where's my child on the interest list for the class waiver, for the HCS waiver? So we're going to provide information on that. It's all in these slides. If you have any questions about doing this or have any problem getting your child on the waiting list, just please let Judy and I know, and we'll help you with that. This is a great website where you can compare all the different Medicaid waivers. It's very helpful. And if you scroll down to the bottom, it describes all the different services and which waiver has which. You can be on as many waiting list or interest list as you want. You can only participate in one waiver at a time. But like, for instance, my son came up on the class waiver first. We accepted that. And then when his name came up on the HCS waiver, we had to look at those and compare and decide which one we wanted. Did we want to keep class or did we want to switch to HCS? Navigate Life. We talked a little bit about this website. You can search, it's in English and Spanish, and you can search different topics there, but they have a great little video about why it's important to get on the waiting list, and lots of information about all types of disability related information. There's the numbers. These are the two main numbers. You'll have to call each one. So there they are, and do that as soon as you can. And this is just a little information about each waiver.
We're not going to read through all that because
we're not going to read
slides at the end of the week.
Yeah, I'd rather answer any questions everybody has.
So I just put the survey link in the chat box, and you can use the QR code. You can, whatever's easiest for you. But we want to get to your questions and answer those. Thank you so much, Leslie. That was great.
Thank you.
Let me start from the beginning where somebody started to ask questions. So you're going to be, a parent asked, when are you going to be getting the slides? So what I'm going to do is after tomorrow, after the presentation, I will send you the slides for all 3 PowerPoints. That way you have it. You have the survey links if you think you forgot to complete a survey link, but you will be receiving that, if not Thursday night, then over the weekend. So I promise I will get that to you. I didn't want to send the slides with the survey link because I need as many people as possible to complete the surveys. So we're not trying to inconvenience you. It's just we really need those surveys completed. Um,
Somebody asked me a question at the beginning. I'm sorry, I didn't
Sure.
see it. So somebody didn't know what ARD meant, and that stands for Admissions Review and Dismissal. Texas is probably one of the only states that uses the term ARD meeting. It's the same thing as an IEP meeting. So, and like I said, no question is silly. That
None.
is really, especially if you came from another state, you wouldn't know what an ARD meeting is because everybody else calls them IEP meetings.
So I believe we covered this, but just to make sure, does the IDEA manual cover charter schools and private schools? Yes, it covers charter schools, but not private schools. Someone asked, can they request an ARD? If so, how often should I expect them to occur? Well, you're going to have an annual ARD. And as far as requesting ARDs, Leslie, you're better at that than answering I am.
So anytime, like if there's something that needs to be changed or that can't be settled outside of an IEP meeting, you know, with a teacher conference or a conference with your special ed person or the principal, that's when you would want to request an ARD meeting. And I always put your request in writing. You know, it should be in a reasonable amount of time. And then make sure you, if they don't get back to you, I kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday. If you request something in writing and nobody responds after a few days, you know, resend it to that person and copy somebody above their head. But yes, you don't want to have ARD meetings all the time, but if it's something important that needs to be changed in the IEP or addressed, like if there's behavioral issues and you need to try to work through that and get a functional behavioral assessment or any new evaluations or anything like that, you know, sometimes you can do some things outside of an ARD meeting, but you can request an ARD at any time. It does take up your time and all of their time. So, you know, like I said, you don't want to have them all the time, but if it's something important, definitely request a new meeting. But you will have one, like Judy said, once a year, because on your annual ARD day, you're going to be planning for the whole year.
Mhm.
And so that's a long time. Another time you might have another ARD meeting is towards the end of the year. If you need your child to have extended school year services, ESY services. So, or if something happens over the summer and you've already had your annual ARD and the school year starts and you need to address something new, you can have an ARD meeting.
So someone asked privately, do you have a template for the daily notebook? It seems like a good idea. Actually, I was asked publicly as well. So, you know, I didn't have a notebook. Teachers have tons of ideas for having a daily communication book. Teachers are really good at that. And I think that's what you meant.
So I had a notebook for
right.
all of my paperwork, but not for the, you know, some schools though, Judy, they have like a daily folder for
Communication
kids
book.
to
Yeah,
bring
they'll have
home.
like a daily folder. I would
Yeah.
see what your child's school has, but I always had a binder that had all of my son's tests, emails from teachers, concerns, things like that. I just had a regular 3-ring binder for that with some folders inside. But as far as a daily notebook, see what the teacher uses, or just, you know, create one. It's not as though we have a template. It was just something the teacher always had.
Yeah, I just had a spiral notebook that I used for communication back and forth. So I might write something in the morning and send it because
Right.
Cameron couldn't tell me anything. So if I had any questions or if I needed to tell something about Cameron that morning or whatever, and then they would write things back.
So how is the IEP followed in a self-contained class? My son is in a self-contained class with common schedule for all kiddos. There's 5 to 6 of them, no difference. Well, everybody may have the same schedule, but your child has different goals than the other kids. So that IEP should still be individualized, even though your child is in a self-contained class. Yes, everyone might be going to lunch at the same time, or they might have social skills at the same time, or they may be working on math skills at the same time. But not everybody is going to be possibly doing the same assignment. Maybe it's just everyone is doing that subject at the same time.
Well,
So,
and one child might be going out for speech
right,
or OT. And I tell you, you really learn a lot by going to observe. I can't stress that enough. They're not going to let you ask a bunch of questions or interfere with
right.
what's going on in the class, but just to sit in there and see what's happening, it really gives you a good idea of what's going on. But if your child, definitely if your child's on the autism spectrum, you should have a daily schedule of minimally unstructured time. So what does that look at? If you need me to send you an example, let me know, and I'd be happy to send you a sample of the daily schedule that they used to do for my son. It wouldn't be right for your child necessarily, but it'd give you an idea.
Please do. Please, yeah.
Okay. Does the school pick who performs the independent evaluation, or do the parents choose?
They may give you a list of people just to try to help you out, but you don't have to choose from their list. You can choose the person within their parameters. Like they're going to say, okay, they have to have these credentials, and so like if if you're doing a independent evaluation for speech, it has to be a licensed speech and language pathologist. If it's, just depending on what it is. So they have to have the appropriate credentials, and generally they want them to live within be within a certain mile radius, because they don't want to pay travel and stuff like that. And then the person that you choose, has to agree to contract with the school to get paid. And you can reach out. There are wonderful groups. I mean, you can call us and we might have an idea, but there are wonderful parent groups on Facebook, if any of you do Facebook. And you're going to learn so much from other parents who have been in your shoes, and they're ahead of you. So, yeah.
Just know that
you don't have to
one
pick off
person's
their list.
experience may not be another person's experience.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get a lot of different opinions in those groups. So you kind of have to filter through.
Pick and choose, yeah.
Yeah, but like I've gotten great, like somebody asked me the other day, yesterday it was, oh, we need a neurologist. And so, of course, the only one I have knowledge of is my son's neurologist. So I gave him that and I said, and then I went to the area Facebook group that their child was in, like the Katie Autism group, and I searched neurologist, and there were 2 or 3 on there that a lot of parents recommended. So I was saying, okay, here's 3 others that a lot of parents in the Katie Autism Facebook group recommend. So those groups can be very helpful. But like Judy said, everybody has different opinions, and like there's people on there that have some ideas that I totally don't agree with, but you get some good information.
You bet. What does it mean when they ask if I'm waiving my rights for 5-day notice? So what that means is the school is supposed to give you 5 school days notice if they want to change something, propose something, do something different. Like when they're scheduling an ARD meeting. One time the special education chairperson was just so overwhelmed, and she said, I know it's only Wednesday, but any chance you're available on Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock for an ARD meeting? Sure, no problem. And I was available. So I signed something that waived my right for that 5-day notice.
But if it's not, if it's not going to be work for you, you don't have
Don't
to
do it.
sign that. Yeah.
Don't do it. For me, it did. So that's what that waiving 5-day notice means, but at a minimum, they need to give you 5 school days notice. I don't understand this next private message. What happens if you apply and don't hear back? Apply to what? I'm not sure what that meant. So if you could private message me again, we'd be happy to answer.
Did you miss the one about if an IEP amendment is made, or have you not gotten to that one?
I don't think I've gotten to that one.
Okay.
Where can you apply for Medicaid waivers? We listed that and we'll be sending you the slides. My daughter doesn't have any insurance, no Medicaid, nothing. Please private message, or excuse me, please email Leslie or myself so we can talk about ways for your child to get some type of health insurance. Really important that she has it. Please make sure that you complete the survey. If IEP amendment is made, how many days does it take to go into effect? It is about special education transportation. So I just want to answer this real quickly, Lizzie.
Oh, I lost you, Judy.
Oh, special education transportation. So if an IEP amendment is made, how many days does it take to go into effect? Keep in mind that the ARD committee can agree, okay, yes, you need this transportation, but the bus barn, especially if you're with HISD, they could take up to 2 weeks to implement that change and to make that change happen.
Yeah, but that really shouldn't be that way. So if you have an amendment, I would ask them at the time you're doing the IEP amendment, when should I expect this to happen? And if it takes too long, I mean, if it's keeping your child out of school, that's totally not going to work. I mean, if you're in a situation,
they can make phone calls, they can do
Yes.
everything. I just know that like at the beginning of the school year, when they're getting all the buses and they don't even have enough bus drivers and everything, that's what a parent was told.
Yeah, but work your way,
Mhm.
each school has their own district policy. So what I would recommend if it's taking too long is to work your way up the chain of command, especially if you're not able to get your child to school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything specific that can be done when there's a behavior issue, but academics is above the grade level they are currently in? Absolutely. You can ask for a functional behavior assessment, an FBA. Put it in writing. Ask for a functional behavior assessment.
A formal one.
Yeah, formal, yes. And then the group can meet and they will come up with a behavior intervention plan. It's called a BIP. So absolutely.
And if you need specific information about that, please email me. I have one of our solutions is specifically about that.
Leslie mentioned that if you feel like DayHab is the next step for your child after high school, that there are wait lists for good DayHabs. Is there a place where local DayHabs are listed and reviewed? And also, are these paid for by waivers or privately? Well, Jen, go ahead.
So not all DayHabs have wait lists, some do. We have a list. It's probably not every single one in the area, but I have a list if you need that list. DayCabs aren't required to take your child. So that's why it's really important to use your transition supplement to make sure they're ready to go to a good DayHab, go visit DayHabs and see what's it going to take to get your kid in there. If you have my son's Medicaid waiver does pay for his DayHab. Some people do private pay. Usually a lot of the DayHabs do both. So I hope that answers your question.
DayHabs can be kind of tricky, so we may have to, Nadia, help you separately on that. So just let us know. Which data should we ask for at an ARD meeting? Usually what data will be presented?
I would say they're probably not going to present any data, but so if there's a problem, or if they tell you that your child, the data shows that your child doesn't need extended school year services, ask to see the data. If they tell you your child's making progress on this specific reading program, but you're not seeing it, where's the data to show that they are? It would be if nobody's taken data and you get your IEP report card and it says your child's supposed to be doing something at 80% or 3 out of 4 times or whatever, if they're not taking any data and writing stuff down, how are they coming up with that IEP report card? It would be like for your typical child, if they went to school and the teacher never wrote down any homework grades or test grades or anything like that, at the end of the 6 weeks, the teacher would be like, oh, let me think. I have all these kids in my class, but little Johnny, I think I'll give him a 70. That
Right.
would just be guessing. It wouldn't be based on any real data.
And, you can certainly ask for information prior to the ARD meeting. Somebody had asked about when should you get this information? Well, I would ask for it a few days prior to the ARD meeting so that you can review it and discuss it at the ARD meeting. Is there a way to get more challenging academics for our daughter while still working through behavior issues? Sure. Behavior and academics are 2 separate issues. It's not like your child shouldn't be challenged because they're working with, through behavior issues. Maybe one of the reasons they're having behavior issues is because they are not happy, they're bored, they're not challenged. I don't know. But I think it's important that your child be challenged in academics. No child ever rises to low expectations. So as Leslie mentioned, if we don't have high expectations for our kids, they're never going to rise to them.
And if your child's in a segregated setting, they're not being exposed to the full curriculum like a typical child is. So
yes,
all of that should be in the IEP, what their IEP goals. Their IEP goals are going to be dictating what they need to work on. So
y'all are asking great questions. Keep it coming. Is our child evaluated every year, or is there at least an ARD meeting every year? Yes, the ARD meeting is every year, but they are evaluated every 3 years by the school district.
Or not more than once a year if you or somebody else request it.
Yes. So I hope that answered your question. You don't want to overtest our kids. We never want to do that. But the school, they used to call it a triennial, and that would be happening every 3 years. The behavior assessment would be conducted by the SLP on site.
By the LSSP.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they mean a speech language pathologist or if you mean an LSSP, the licensed specialized school psychologist. So I'm not sure, parent, because you sent me a private message, I'm not sure if you mean who the behavior assessment is being conducted by, if the school has one on site, correct? So I'm not sure who's going to be conducting that behavior assessment.
So you want to make sure a formal one is done. And if a formal one is done, it should be a licensed school psychologist with a really solid background in behavior, or the district BCBA behavior analyst. Because if it's just the teacher, a lot of our special education teachers, or most of our special education teachers, they could do it if it's not a big problem and if that's working great. But if things are still not working, you want a formal one. That would be where somebody comes in and observes the child in different settings over a few different days and can see what behaviors are happening, how
what are the triggers?
How they're responding to the behaviors. Sometimes behaviors are caused by what other people do and inadvertently. So I have a lot of information on that if you want to email me.
And as far as who should you contact, the special education chairperson, your child's special education teacher.
Put it in writing, put it in
Put
writing.
it in writing, absolutely. But contact someone at the school and find out who's evaluating them.
And I have a sample letter for requesting that if you'd like it. So just email me.
Which classes are we allowed to observe, gen ed or special education? I don't think you can observe general education. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, if your child, like I observed general education because my child was in general ed. So, and on Monday, I shared the story of my friend who went to observe her son in gen ed. And his in-class support person was just sitting at the back of the room, not really helping him. So they're going to have district policies. I would look, and a lot of times they're going to say, oh, we don't allow anybody to observe. Well, they allow parents to go up there and volunteer and be in the classroom and things like that. And so I would ask for, if they deny you, now you can't go spend the whole day up there. But if they deny you a chance to observe, that would be a big red flag to me. But you would have to follow their policies about that. And if they say absolutely not, then I'd ask to see that policy in writing.
So some of you are asking us to send you samples of this, send you copies of that. Please email Leslie and or myself and tell us specifically what you need, because we want to get through these questions and there's no way I can take down all of that. So for the person who said, you know, my 4-year-old son is autistic, send me a sample of the daily schedule, please email us and ask us for that. So we still have several more questions. Is it possible to find out what services are available on campus and how do we get access to those? So keep in mind that the ARD committee meets, the IEP is developed. Whatever services your child needs, be it speech, occupational therapy, if the ARD committee decides the school district needs to provide that, then your child gets them on campus. It's not like you have to go drive your child somewhere for something. I'm not quite sure if you need additional information on that. If you do, please email us.
And make sure you do get a copy of the full and individual evaluation report before you go to the meeting. I would ask for that in writing. Sometimes they provide it, but a lot of times you have to ask for that. I would not go to the meeting unless you had a chance to look that over first.
Can we demand services from the school to continue services with child's private OT and speech, since school did not provide services so far? You can't really, I mean, sure, you can demand it, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get it.
So I could give a good example of that, Judy.
Yeah, we've just got a few more questions and we're running late. So yeah, but if you want to say it, sure.
Okay, somebody's child was not getting their speech therapy in a school district, and the school said, oh, we're just gonna provide compensatory services in a group setting over the summer. Parent filed a TEA complaint, and anytime you file it, we're going to kind of go over this tomorrow, but they were, because the school was not going to provide it because they didn't have a speech path, they had to pay mileage and pay for outside, but generally speaking, they're not going to pay for it. But if you didn't get it, your child should get compensatory services.
Yeah, provided that the ARD committee agreed. If the ARD committee said your child is supposed to get speech, OT, whatever service, and they didn't get it, that's different. But if the ARD committee says, no, they don't need it, like for example, my son would have benefited tremendously from occupational therapy. They claimed it was not educationally relevant. So I had to pay for it on my own. I could only fight so many battles. My son is autistic, but he can read and do other academic work, and the school is ignoring his strengths. What do I do? Please reach out to me. We need to come up with something that the school can understand your child's strengths. Any school or teacher that sees only the challenges, that can be really frustrating. So we need to either create a one-page profile, some type of little one-sheet biography about your child so that they can see the strengths that your child has. Really important. So you had a great parent-teacher meeting yesterday, and teacher was not aware that he knows a lot of sight words and was able to do other academics. Yeah, that may require a follow-up teacher meeting. What should I do to bring the ARD meet? What should I bring to the ARD meeting to support my case? What does BCBA stand for again? No problem. It's Board Certified Behavior Analyst. Board Certified Behavior Analyst. That is a BCBA. What should I bring to the ARD meeting to support my case? If you have any outside therapy, outside evaluations, explain what a typical day is like when your child gets home from school. What is it that's causing those, if they're having some meltdowns? It depends what it is you're looking for that you want the ARD committee to agree to as far as what you should bring in order to support your case. Okay, translators, don't worry if you have to go. I'm just seeing this now. We understand. We appreciate you staying over.
I put our email addresses in there. Somebody asked and I couldn't figure out how to do a direct message, but I did put my email.
Oh, okay.
Wait,
yeah, and if you want to go to the next slide, Leslie, it's on there too.
Okay.
SciFair allows you to observe for only 30 minutes. Interesting. I didn't know that.
Well, guess what? You could observe 30 minutes one day at this time of the day,
Yep.
and maybe a few weeks later, 30 minutes at another time.
Definitely. I think I got everything.
There's our email addresses.
Yep. And everybody has mine because I've been sending all those emails. But please feel free to reach out to Leslie and myself. We certainly didn't mean to rush through things. We just wanted to get through the questions. It's really hard to do individual answering and get into real specifics in such a short amount of time. This is to give you the basics of what you need to know and how we can support you and where we can guide you to the right resource. So we will be having another session tomorrow, same time, same Zoom link. Please, please complete the survey. We would appreciate it. I'll be sending out the survey link again. And thank you so much for joining us.